Is this on?
Yes, my lord.
Good. Hello, this is God speaking. Can we dial that down?
Yes, my lord.
Thanks. Welcome, new arrival to the Eternity Ward. Please take a number and make your way down to the left or the right to the waiting room. All you need is the refreshments I made just for you. I would tell you to steer clear of the apples, they're forbidden, and the 2 snakes. Fools, sorry, that are chewing the fat in the corner, but you probably wouldn't listen anyway. So good luck, I bless you, and on your way.
Welcome to the Eternity Ward, where we flick through the daily rags, go up and down the FM band, and flick through the TV stations and sit around, chat with our buddies as we wait for an appointment with God. I'm Kris Adams.
And I'm Nick McKinnon.
Yes, and here we are, another episode of the Eternity Ward, which we're doing live now, so we may be answering some questions from live viewers. But yeah, so here we are, and we're talking... What have you been up to this week? That's what we're talking first. Bit of just small talk.
My daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, flung me over a railing, so I whacked my arm on some Besser blocks. She's a strong woman. Don't mess with her, boys.
Wow, how did she fling you over a railing? What did you do?
What did I do? Oh, victim blaming, Kris. It's just like you. We do this little fun game where when we're holding hands walking along a sidewalk or something, she will slam me into like telegraph poles and, street signs and that sort of thing. Great fun. I wasn't expecting her to do it to like a low fence, like sort of a waist-high fence. And my momentum just carried me straight over it.
Oh, no.
It was in the middle of my son's school, and so there was this teacher there who was like, what the hell are you two doing?
No, well, I've been teaching rock and water. So that's where you don't have to be the strongest person. If you just get them at the right time, that's right, the rock and water salute, respect. Yeah, if you get them at the right time and use their momentum, then, yeah, you can throw them over a railing and into some Besser bricks. Yeah.
Right, so you taught her.
That's not what we encourage, though. No.
Well, my daughter's been learning some self-defense, actually. She's been going to a self-defense course. So that's probably where it came from.
Well, there you go. You should be proud of her.
I was very proud of her. We were having a big giggle when it happened.
Oh, dear. Anyway, tonight we are actually talking about the media. The media is in the news at the moment, reporting on themselves.
Yep, talking about more people that have been flung over railings.
Yes. So obviously the major story centers around the ABC, our very own ABC, and their board, with 2 appointees of the board having gone over the railings.
Craziness.
What's going on?
What is going on? So do we want to outline what's happened?
I think so. Yeah.
All right.
So, well, it sort of started with Michelle Guthrie. Is that her name?
That's her name.
Yep. She was on the board. What was her actual title?
She was the managing director.
Right. And so the chairman, in Justin Milne, I wouldn't say the board sacked her, didn't they? So it wasn't necessarily just him. The board sacked her.
Yep.
They can do that.
They can do that.
It is within their powers to do that, and they did that. And everyone's like, wow, what's going on? Why?
That's what she was like too.
Yeah, so she was gone, and then due to ABC staff all basically accusing Justin Milne, who's the chairman, of allegedly, interfering with the ABC and interfering, I guess, politically and so on, that he should step aside. And at the moment, he has stepped aside. Yeah,
so apparently, I didn't realise this, apparently Justin Milne is a friend of Malcolm Turnbull.
Yeah, he used to work for him when
right.
It was like when Malcolm Turnbull made all of his billions on OneTel or something, so yeah. They're close friends, but not that he was like a partner or anything back then. I think Justin Milne was much lower down in the organisation and just had a job there. But yeah.
So what exactly did Justin Milne do that was interfering with the ABC's integrity?
Well, the allegations are that he was interfering. So I would say allegedly at the moment, because it's, there isn't proof.
Don't get sued, Kris.
Yeah, allegedly there were emails or messages to certain people, and that he had been asking for the sacking of Emma Alberici, and also previously had to go at another ABC presenter, wanting him gone. And that maybe he was the major person behind, Michelle Guthrie being ousted. So the allegations are that he wanted these people sacked because the coalition, the government at the time, doesn't like them. I guess the inference is that the government has said, do something about this, and he's tried to do something about it. But I'm like going, at the moment, it's attempted interference, isn't it? Because he hasn't actually sacked her.
There also hasn't been any suggestion that the government did actually make contact with Justin Milne, is there?
I would think that there is, but I don't think that's the major focus at the moment. I think they can express their displeasure.
But they didn't ring Justin Milne and say,
sack her.
Hey, we are crabby about Emma Alberici. We'd like it if you get rid of her.
Yeah, I don't think that...
That would be a massive issue.
It would be. So that's not something that's on the agenda at the moment, but there is calls for an inquiry now. Well, there is an inquiry going to happen. Things like that may come out of it, but at the moment, that's not something that's on the radar. No. It would be fairly well known by him that they would be displeased with someone, and that he's decided he wants to try and do something about that to appease the government, and the ABC says, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, he also tried to stop Triple J moving its Hottest 100 from Australia Day too, I think.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And he said in one of those emails, we need to save the ABC, not Emma Alberici. This all sort of comes in the context of the government has been reducing the budget for the ABC, so there has been cuts. So the more antagonistic the ABC is towards the government, the more likely the government are to continue wanting to reduce their budget.
Yeah. They've had their funding cut by, I read, like 25% over the last 30 years.
So there is a bit of a strange conflict of interest when the government is funding a media organisation.
Right. Why do you think it's strange?
Well, because it's just a natural thing that I'm not going to want to pay for something that's constantly attacking me.
Yeah. In that sense, it's strange.
Like I don't have to be corrupt to not want someone out there constantly attacking me. That's just normal.
Yeah, but their role is to question your decisions, your policies, your ideas, to research, to verify things, and to report eventually, because that's part of the role of the press is to hold you accountable. But the thing is, it's like, is it the government funding the ABC or is it the taxpayer funding the ABC? So that's one thing I would argue, because I would say that because the ABC was set up, it was founded in 1929. It was funded by taxpayers specifically to be independent of government and politics, to be like what the BBC is. And so there's a board, and that board, the first principle of any board is to, go by their founding document. I know this because my wife is on a board now, and she's just been learning all about the responsibilities of being on a board. So it's the duty of the board to enforce that document, and that document was to maintain the independence and integrity of the corporation and to ensure the accurate and impartial news gathering and reporting and so on. So,
but that'd be true for any news organisation, wouldn't it?
You would hope that would be in their constitution, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the issue isn't whether they're trying to be unbiased. The issue is whether they truly are representative of all sides of the political spectrum. And I don't think anyone would argue that the ABC don't have a left-wing bias. Do you think?
I'll argue it.
Oh, okay. Good. So you don't think they have a left-wing bias?
So there have been a heap of inquiries thrown at the ABC over the years, heaps of them, and a lot of them to address this whole concept that the ABC has a bias. So there was an inquiry into the ABC earlier this year about, that was about competitive neutrality of the national broadcasters. So that was about, the ABC moving into a digital realm, and that hurts, News Corp. And so Pauline Hanson wanted an inquiry into the ABC. So she made a deal with the government that she would vote with their media ownership laws if they gave her an inquiry. So they gave her that one. There's been inquiries, like there was in 2017, there was, inquiry into Four Corners. There was in 2012, there was a Finkelstein inquiry on the back of the phone hacking stuff that happened overseas, just to see, whether our media organizations were safe. There was ex-commercial journalists have to head inquiries like Gerald Stone and Ray Martin. There have been independent reviews, all of these stuff, because there was the Q&A issue, when they had that Muslim guy with some links to something that everyone chucked up a big fuss, and they had an inquiry then. They had an inquiry after the ABC and the Guardian sort of covered the mistreatment of asylum seekers, and they, and Tony Abbott was all claiming that they were on everyone's side but Australia's, and they should be on the home team, and they're un-Australian. So they've had all of these inquiries, and every review finds them efficient, impartial, and factual to a very high standard. Every review.
So have you heard of any left-wing people claiming that they're not unbiased? Have you ever heard of a left-wing person claiming that they're too right-wing?
Oh, yeah. I think it was 1 in 6 people asked about the ABC think that the ABC is biased to the left. 1 in 20 people think that the ABC is biased to the right. But 80% of people believe that they're not biased,
So more people think they're left-wing biased than right-wing biased?
Yes. So
By a
you could
substantial
say
margin.
that
1 in 6 is a lot bigger a number than 1 in 20.
Yeah, and 80% say that they're not biased. When it comes to bias, we've discussed this before. There is bias in everything. We are all biased, You can't keep bias out of media. There's always bias. But the ABC, I think that they actually try and live up to their journalistic integrity. They try and... So I think it was...
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Right. So Maxine McHugh, when she was asked about, when people were asking about biases and stuff, she said that in her experience, when she was there, like she left to become a Labor politician, by the way, and we've had 10 people leave the ABC to become Labor politicians and 9 leave to become coalition politicians over time. But she said that it wasn't so much that there's a left-wing bias, there's more a collectivist philosophy. And that collectivist philosophy is we take seriously the idea that we are the fourth estate and we need to hold these people accountable. We take seriously that we have journalistic integrity that we need to, and impartiality that we need to try and live up to. Yes, we're always going in with bias, but for me, I think that they try and live out that stuff to the best of their ability. And so to say that the ABC is biased, everyone's biased, but who's more impartial than them? Who?
Possibly no one, but I'm not arguing that they're the only biased news organisation. Like you're saying, every news organisation is biased, every human being is biased. My argument is that I find it strange that you won't admit that they have a left-wing bias, whereas I think that's pretty obvious. I don't know who those 1 in 20 people are that think they have a right-wing bias.
If the facts say that their coverage, in all of the inquiries, the facts state that their coverages are equal of all the parties. Actually, this one you might like. This stat you might find interesting. Back in, I can't remember, I think it was like 2007. They did a study on ABC journalists and who they vote for. Right. I think it was about 30% voted for Labor, about 30% voted for the Coalition, about 40% voted for the Greens.
Yeah.
So does that indicate a left-wing bias?
Of course it does.
Yes.
But you still don't think they're left-wing bias?
Well, there's a presence within the organisation. There's a right-wing presence within the organisation. Isn't that right-wing presence going to hold the left-wing presence to account to not fall over into bias, into not being impartial?
When I read their website, no, they are not doing that. They might be trying their best, but No.
My problem with that is I think that they report fearlessly. I think they report the facts.
But you're left wing, Kris. Of course you think
but
that.
let me finish this. I think that they deploy reason and logic. I think they're rooted in reality. I think they're free of vested interests. I think they have Australia's best interests at heart. And I think that if you feel like the ABC is biased against the right in that sort of a situation, well, yeah, I might agree with you. Because for me, being left-wing, I'm going, because I think those values aren't held in the same regard by the right.
So name a news organisation that you think is too left-wing.
Too left-wing?
Yeah. Like the ABC clearly aren't in your view. The
ABC...
They might be left-wing, but that's a good thing in your mind. What's one that's too left-wing?
It's not about being left-wing. It's like if you're so far right-wing, you perceive them as left-wing, you know. But they're down the centre. They're as impartial as can be. Prove that they're not. All the evidence says that their coverage is fair. You know, all of these people that the coalition has employed, you know, these people to head the inquiries against them, and they all come back saying, the ABC's fine. She's right, mate.
Yeah.
You put the burden of proof on people all the time, you know, like just because it's your perception that it's left-wing, they're held to regulatory authorities. Maybe we should put you through an inquiry, Nick.
I'm not claiming it's my perception. Like, it is my perception that they're left-wing, but that's not what my argument is. My argument is that that's everyone's perception. Everyone thinks they're left-wing.
No, but that's not the facts.
Yeah, well, I'm stunned by that. I'm stunned that some people would actually think that they are right of centre.
Yeah, are they right of centre? I'm like, no. Are they left of centre? If they are left of centre, man, it's so marginal that I'm not concerned about it. That's the issue. Like,
but that's because you're further left than they are.
Sure. And you're a long way right, maybe. No, you're not right. I don't know what you are.
Well, I think of myself as left.
Right.
Like, I don't know what other people think of me, but I think of myself as being a progressive. Like, far more than I am a right-wing. Like, I have massive disagreements with the right-wing.
So what have they done that's screamed to you that they're left-wing bias?
Identity politics is the main one. The way they talk about any of those sort of issues, whether it's racism or sexism, all of that sort of reporting is just so blindly biased that it's hard for me to take them seriously when I read those sort of articles. Like, there's other stuff they do really well. Like, as I say, like they're the news organisation that I look at. I don't look at the Australian very often. I don't look at, you know, I never look at the Herald Sun. I don't watch Sky News. I don't even know what right-wing media organisations there are in Australia other than those ones. The ABC is the thing that I watch more than I tried reading The Guardian, but I found them even worse than the ABC. So,
well, they're left. They're left-leaning for sure. Like news.com.au or, you know, News Corp is right-leaning. The Guardian's left-leaning. I think the ABC, Sydney Morning Herald, they're sort of down the centre.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't have thought the Sydney Morning Herald is down the centre either. Like, they're more central than The Guardian.
Well, I was doing research on this and, you know, compiled data of what people think of where these organisations sit. Sydney Morning Herald was in the middle. ABC, Sydney Morning Herald, right up in the middle, up top. Yeah, Guardian to the left, news.com to the right. So that's a lot of people's view that they're more central. But I'm a bit tired of the attacks on the ABC.
Well, so you know what would stop the attacks on the ABC?
Yeah, what?
If we privatised it.
Huh.
If it wasn't a government-funded thing, then it would just be another organisation. Like, no one attacks The Guardian. Everyone just goes, well, they're allowed to do whatever the hell they want. They're left-wing. They're allowed to be left-wing. Whereas when it's the public funding it, that's when people start going, it's hardly fair that you guys are presenting a left-wing viewpoint when you are publicly funded. Like, if you were funding The Australian, you would be pissed. If you were funding Sky News, you would be like, we got to get off this. This is silly. Why would the government fund any of those organisations?
Okay, so The Guardian's allowed to be left. Yeah. There's other organisations that are allowed to be wherever they want. Yeah, and the trust in media at the moment is at a record low in Australia, and mostly due to the growth of fake news and stuff. And I'm going, we need an impartial media. This is essential for the health of our democracy to have a public broadcaster. The ABC is an institution that is unlike any other. I would say it's our most important cultural institution, and to lose it would be devastating. To lose it to privatisation, devastating.
How would you feel if the Australian was lost, if they stopped existing? Yeah. Well, I think it's the same thing. Like, I think the Australian are not a lot more right-wing than the ABC is left-wing.
Is the Australian a publicly funded newspaper?
No, that's what I'm saying is the problem.
No.
Like, so one of the issues with the, what's his name, Justin Milne, was that he was feeling pressure. Like, I don't think the government were actually, ringing him up and putting pressure on him, but he's just aware that, the coalition are not going to like when people are bagging the crap out of them 24/7. And they've already been cutting our budget over and over again. And, with that quote that he said, we need to save the ABC, not Emma. Like, he obviously saw that having people like Emma Alberici attacking the government constantly. Now, I don't know if she actually was. She may not have been. That's obviously his perception of it, was that was causing harm to the future of the ABC. Now, wouldn't it be better if it was privatised and then they wouldn't have to worry about government interference? They would just be 100% an independent body where the only people they're responsible to are the people that they're providing news to.
No.
Because?
Well, they're not going to produce anywhere near the quality of journalism, the quality of comedy, the quality of drama, the quality of kids' television that you've got kids. How much ABC Kids do they watch?
Zero?
YouTube. Why? What do they watch?
YouTube.
Right. A lot of people, ABC Kids is really important to them. Current affairs, documentary, all of these things requires money for them to produce this, and we've been funding it as taxpayers for a long, long, long time, and we've been very happy with what they're producing. They have been reflecting back to us. Like, I tell you this over and over again, we're a species who exist on the telling of stories and of narratives, and this is why I think they're the most important cultural institution in our country, is that they tell us what's going on. They inform us about the news, and they do it as factually as they possibly can.
But when you say that, when you say they do it as factually as they possibly can, what goes off in my head is, so does every other news organisation. The Guardian try to report as factually as they can. So does the Australian. So does Sky News. The difference is the bias that each people in that organisation bring to their reporting. And it's not that any of those organisations are more malicious in their reporting. They're all trying to report factually and unbiased.
No, that used to be the case, because it's always been politicians are allowed to be biased. The judiciary is not allowed to be biased. Journalism was also not allowed to be biased back in the day. People had trust in journalists. They were one of the, highest trusted people. I wanted to be a journalist. I did journalism courses after I finished school. I worked on a few radio stations for a while. I got to interview politicians and stuff. There used to be this thing where there was this high journalistic integrity that people would try and hold to, and it didn't matter whether you were the publicly funded ABC or whether you were with 7 or 9 or 10 or whatever. Everyone sort of felt like they were in it together and they were doing the same thing. But I don't buy that anymore. Because of the money. Rupert Murdoch owns 8 of the 12 major newspapers in Australia. Fairfax has the other 3, and now Fairfax is going to go under. They've been eaten up by 9. So we have one of the most concentrated, media regimes in the world. We do not end up with a press, with a balance in the press, with a balance of information. More than ever, I think we need an impartial media, a publicly funded media. The funding's been cut by 25% over 30 years. I think in this day and age, the funding should be going up.
Because you're left wing and the ABC are left wing.
I think we need them more than ever, because we need to hold, they are the fourth estate, right? They're the segment of society that, wields an indirect influence on society. Like, so there's the other estates of the legislative, the executive, the judiciary, and they're the press. We're actually the fifth estate, Nick. There's a new one. We're the fifth estate.
What's that? Facebook?
Yes. Facebook or Twitter or any non-traditional sources, things like blogs and things like podcasts.
Oh.
We're the fifth estate.
Yeah. All right.
So in one sense, we can hold the fourth estate to account too. But with anything, we want to be We want to try and... We don't have a regulatory authority holding us to account. We can say whatever we want, and that's part of the problem. You know, that's why I want there to be a public broadcaster, publicly funded, that is being held to being as impartial or unbiased as possible. And they have reviews all the time. They have their own reviews and audits on their own bias all the time.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know what more you could expect from them.
Well, we'll get to that later.
All right.
Aaron made a comment that I think ties into something that I wanted to say to you anyway. So he said, do the left need the ABC because they can't afford their own media outlets?
Yeah, good question.
I don't think they do, but I do think that the ABC, like you mentioned Fairfax struggling, I think the ABC's existence makes Fairfax that much more difficult to find an audience. Because if the ABC didn't exist, all those left-wing people would be going to The Guardian and Fairfax. And when there's a publicly funded broadcaster like the ABC, it's much harder. There's, you know, instead of there just being The Guardian and Fairfax, they've all of a sudden got to fight with this publicly funded behemoth, the ABC, whose revenue stream is not going away. It might be reducing, but it's not reducing at the same rate as what Fairfax's revenue stream is. Yep.
Well, that was one of the inquiries, was asking Fairfax and News Corp, you know, to send in submissions about how the ABC and the SBS, you know, has hurt their business and so on. Not that the ABC and SBS got to reply to any of that, but there were findings that the ABC hasn't been siphoning audience from Fairfax. Now, maybe your statement is it makes it harder for Fairfax to actually siphon audience in the first place if they're established with ABC.
It's a zero-sum game. There's only 24 million Australians. It's not infinite. And so however many people are looking at the ABC, those people are not, at that point in time at least, looking at Fairfax. And if every left-wing person spends 3 hours a day looking at news and an hour and a half of that's on the ABC, well, that's half of their time gone. So yeah, it's a zero-sum game. It's not like there's an infinite number of people or an infinite number of hours. So yeah, Fairfax are definitely competing with the ABC in a way that they're not competing with the Australian. But anyway, I wanted to get on to Fairfax ending and the traditional media that really are struggling at the moment, because I think this sort of does tie into why we're at this point with the ABC, in that like their budget's being cut down because the traditional media has just been taking a nosedive. Like I was having a look at it. Like, I don't know about you, Kris, but when was the last time do you ever get the newspaper? Have you ever in your life got the newspaper?
I've probably bought about 10, 15 newspapers from a counter in my life.
In your life, okay.
For whatever reason.
I mean, like being subscribed to it, but no, okay.
No.
Me neither. I've never been subscribed to one. When's the last time you watched TV news?
Yeah. No, I don't do much of that anymore. I'll catch The Project every now and then.
Yep.
But that's more of an entertainment news show than a news show.
Yeah, it's current affairsy. Just because it's entertaining doesn't mean it's not news. So 55% of 65-year-olds and over watch TV news. So 55% of people aged 65 years old and over watch TV news on a regular basis. What percentage of 18 to 30-year-olds watch TV news on a regular basis, do you reckon?
Oh, man. If I'm not even doing it much anymore. Like, I used to watch ABC and SBS all the time, but I think ever since this whole internet revolution, I've
why would you
just gone to the internet for my news? Look, I'm scared it could be as low as like 5 or 10%.
Yeah, it's
what is it?
12%.
Yeah,
so 12% of 18 to 30-year-olds watch TV news on a regular basis. Where's that number going to be in another 5 years? And that's TV news. That's not newspapers.
Yeah.
Newspapers are already almost dead. TV news is on its way out as well.
It used to be more like what? Everyone watched the TV news, didn't they? Everyone.
So when I was growing up, I don't know if he still does it, but when I was growing up, my dad would turn on the Jim Lehrer show on SBS at whatever it was, 4:30, and that would go till 5:30. Then he'd watch whatever news came on at 5:30, and then he'd switch to the other channel, and he'd watch that news till 6:30 or whatever. Then he'd watch, SBS, and then he'd watch ABC, and then he'd watch a 7:30 report, and he'd literally be watching news from 4:30 through to 8 o'clock. And that was every night. And he might still do that. I don't know. But, I mean, there's no way in hell I would do that. Like, why? I can just go to the abc.news website and have a look at it. And there you go. I've got the headlines. Don't need to look at the crappy stories that I'm not interested in. And I'm done.
Yeah. That's what I do.
Yeah, and I think that's what almost all... I don't want to call myself young, Kris, but anyone under 65, perhaps.
The landscape's changing.
Yeah. And so where are people getting their news from these days? So we look at online websites. Where else do you get your news from?
Isn't that it? Like, anything that I sort of see on social media would be, connected to an online website anyway, if it's a news article. I don't know. Like, okay, so there's the ABC. For my right wing slant, I'll go to news.com. For my left wing slant, I'll go to The Guardian. They're my three major things that I sort of consume. And it's just about all online. I'll watch a tiny little bit of The Project, which Aaron says is just a left wing chat fest, which I'm not going to argue with that at all. But I do like that, they do. This is one thing, like the left wing media will throw right wing opinions into it. But I don't see much of that on right-wing media. It's just, boom, all right-wing media people. Anyway, I don't have newspapers. I don't listen to the radio. Actually, no, that's not true. I'll listen to the radio. I'll listen to ABC radio when I'm driving around.
Yeah, so radio is one of the only sources of media that hasn't been declining, like traditional ones. So radio stayed at about 25%. Whereas, TV and newspapers have just been nosediving, which kind of surprised me as well. Like, I thought radio would be taking a hit from podcasts, because that's one of the other... Like, so here are the things that I thought where people get their news from these days. Enough. Podcasts, I think, is a big one. Like, from a current affairs perspective, you probably don't get news from there, but, like, instead of, watching your 7:30 reports or your Four Corners or those sort of things, people are turning to podcasts for these long-form conversations. So instead of having... your Q&A where you've got 6 people all on a panel for an hour. So you've all got roughly, 7 or 8 minutes over the course of that hour to talk. Whereas going from that to a podcast where you've got 2 people who can sit for 3 hours and have a conversation and can let the conversation go as deep as it needs to go without any time limits or anything like that. I think podcasts are a big place that a lot of people are turning to. Another one is YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
Get your news from YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, I'm a bit old.
Yeah, so like whenever I'm, making dinner or hanging the washing out or vacuuming, anything, I'll have either a podcast on or YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a never-ending source of information. There's problems with that, of course, which I'm sure we've talked about in the past in terms of the siloing of it and the...
Yes, yeah. Google, if you get your news from Google and stuff like that, then it can actually direct particular stories to you, knowing that that's what you're going to like.
Because it just wants to keep your eyeballs glued to the screen, so it will keep giving you what it thinks you want. So, yeah, there's definitely a negative side of that, for sure. But I think going back to TV, with its decline, I think TV has gone into more of a clickbaity style television where they're just... Like, they know they're in decline. They're getting pressure from management saying, look, our revenue streams are declining. Our viewerships are declining. We need to make sure we are relevant. We need to make sure we are providing the content that our viewers want to watch. And what that means is it ends up preaching to the choir sort of thing. So if you're a right-wing news organisation, you get more right-wing. If you're a left-wing news organisation, I think you get more left-wing. And I think that's what's happening with the traditional media companies that are struggling to stay afloat.
And I think this started with Rupert. I think that Rupert Murdoch, he wanted to cause division. And, he's like the friggin' kingmaker now. If you want to talk about interference, he's interfering in our politics. He wanted Malcolm Turnbull gone. So this is the organisation which, owns like 60% of our media. That's nuts.
Yeah. And the front pages that they've had in some of their newspapers have been horrendous.
Right.
Whatever there was. There was one about Julia Gillard. Like, there was another one about, I think it was Rudd that was kick this mob out or something. It's just like, you're meant to be a bloody newspaper. You're not meant to be campaigning for the demise of prime ministers. Know your role.
Yes. And their role should be reporting the facts. You know, because the facts matter. The facts are what connect us to reality, and you want the facts to be uncolored by ideology, by politics, even by morals and religion, and because you want the facts
to whatever amount possible.
Yes. And I think, truth that's more than just facts. Truth is sort of like, I've heard it said, it's sort of like connecting all of the dots of the facts together to see, like cause and effect, and to, so you got to use your intellect and wisdom and critical thinking and everything to sort of piece the bigger picture together to try and argue a truth over a fact. But that's what they're meant to be doing, is reporting the facts. And so do we want, like, if you just want to say, privatize everything and people go to the left and the right to wherever their audience is, who's going to be left just telling us the facts? This is what I'm scared. I don't want to see this.
No one is doing that, Kris. The ABC are not in the centre.
I know you don't like their stance on identity politics, right? But, when it comes to reporting on politics per se, or on world affairs, you got a problem?
But I could say the same about the Australian. Like, I'm not saying that the ABC do bad reporting. I think they do a good job. It's just that, to me, they're obviously left-wing, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with them being left-wing. The only problem with that is that they're being funded by everyone in Australia, left and right-wing Australians, and I don't think that's fair.
I think there's a right-wing presence in there, and I think that they are being impartial, and I think that if you think that they're somehow crazily left-wing, then I think you need to look at your own perception.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're crazily left-wing, but I'm saying they are left-wing, right. And I would have thought that's obvious. No,
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
I accept that there would be a majority of people within the organisation that would lean to the left.
Well, yeah.
And so that's going to have a slight bearing, but I think that they are our best bet because with these organisations that no longer hold to the journalistic integrity and don't just report the facts, this is why we've got a record low trust in the media. A lot of it's to do with all the stories that they see on social media, and they don't know whether to trust them anymore. And I think, how do we beat the fake news stories, propaganda and everything? I'm like, well, we'll beat it with facts, and we beat it with truth. And they're our best bet.
Maybe. I don't know if that works.
We're not going to beat it if we just privatize them. And I don't understand this whole privatizing everything. What, do you want to privatize everything? Do you want to privatize the prisons?
No.
How well has that worked in America?
No, not the prisons.
So why privatize the media? Why privatize a publicly funded institution? I'm a taxpayer. I want them there.
Of course you do.
Yeah. And so do a lot of taxpayers.
Because they represent your ideological viewpoint. So of course you want them there.
I'm more left than
and you would want someone else to be paying for it. But like I'm saying, if it was the Australian that was being publicly funded, you would be questioning that.
If the Australian was being publicly funded, would it still be what it is?
Why wouldn't it be?
We don't have a publicly funded newspaper.
No. Okay, if Sky News was being publicly funded.
Right. Would I be happy with them? No.
Yeah. Because it's not a matter of whether you want news to be publicly funded. It's whether they're representing your viewpoint. And the ABC do represent your viewpoint. Not perfectly, but closer than most other news organisations. Whereas the Australian and Sky News don't.
I'm arguing they represent fact. They represent integrity.
But the things that you consider to be facts, you're viewing them from a left-wing bias.
So every inquiry that's been done into them that finds that they're impartial, and a lot of these people have been appointed by right-wing political parties to do the inquiry, and they've come out impartial, they've come out efficient, and they've come out to a very high standard.
I'm not doubting any of that. I agree with all of that. You can have a left-wing bias and still be impartial. Because no one's perfect. If what you mean by impartial is unbiased, well then of course they're not impartial.
I don't know how to argue this with you anymore.
No, we've probably gone round that roundabout enough. So what I reckon the ABC should be doing, and The Guardian and The Australian and Sky News, I reckon every news organisation should be actively looking for people who come from the other side of the aisle. So The Guardian and the ABC, they should actively be saying, we want to employ conservative journalists. And maybe they could even trade. Like you could trade Emma Alberici for whoever the hell works for The Australian, because I don't know who writes for them. Greg Jericho, is that one of them? I think I've seen him on Q&A. Yeah, so you could do some trades. That'd be a great idea. Then every news organisation could have arguments in the editorial room about the slant that you should be taking for the way you're reporting. I like that idea. It's never going to happen, of course, but
Yeah.
but it's like
What happens at the ABC, doesn't it?
not enough, clearly. But so the ABC, which is publicly funded, I think that should be, I don't know if a requirement's too strong, but if I was the head of the ABC, I would be very keen on trying to balance out the reporting so that there are more conservatives in the newsroom. Like, not so that you can make it more conservative, but so you can make it more balanced. Like, you don't want to turn the ABC into another version of the Australian. You don't want that. But you do want it to be more balanced. I don't think it's balanced at the moment. I know you do, but yeah, I certainly don't.
Yeah. That's what the board's duty is to maintain the integrity, to keep it from being biased, to ensure it's accurate and impartial, and to maintain its independence from politics as well. And so in one sense, Justin Milne failed in his responsibility to maintain that independence and integrity if what's alleged to have happened. And he had a conflict of interest. He was like, he's also the chairperson of a whole lot of other commercial organizations and stuff. And one of them is MYOB, if you remember them, that organization. Emma Alberici's story or whatever was centering a lot on the fact that there were organizations like MYOB that were dodging tax. And that was some of the focus of what she was talking about. And he's the chairperson on the, so there's a, it's hard when you got to find the right person to be on a board, so that there isn't a conflict of interest, so that they can fight for your institution. These people, there's been a lot of criticism over the past, 15 chair people that, because they've always been appointed by like the Minister of Communications, right? Yep. And so the government of the day sort of appoints the board member, and he was a friend of Malcolm. In 2007, Labor actually announced new plans that there should be an independent panel that was at arm's length from the communication minister that would set who was going to be on the board. And if the communications minister wanted to add somebody else, then he would have to explain why to Parliament. But that was still possible as long as he could explain why.
But so who would choose who's on the panel? Like, it sort of just adds an extra layer of
independent panel of people with expertise in the area. But that is a good question.
Because it'd still be coming back to the communications minister. He'd still be the one making those choices. And, if I choose 3 of my buddies to be on that independent panel, well, who the hell cares whether I've just added an extra layer of bureaucracy?
What do you think about, like, the communications minister having a go at Triple J for moving their Hottest 100 to not being Australia Day and accusing them of making a political statement?
It is a political statement.
As a taxpayer, okay.
Is it not?
So what do you think of that? Well, I would say it's a statement. I would say it's a political statement.
Yeah. So this is...
I wouldn't say that it's a bipartisan political statement. That's where I think, like, Labor and the Coalition, neither of them have got any plans to change Australia Day.
Yeah, I don't know if you think this, but I'm pretty sure the Labor Party would change the date of Australia Day at the drop of a hat if they thought they had widespread public support. The reason they're not doing it, same thing as same-sex marriage. They were against same-sex marriage, not in principle, but because the majority of Australians were against it. The minute that public support changes, the Labor Party will change on that. So, yeah, they might be saying publicly that they don't support changing the date, but I think privately I'm quite confident that, I don't know if most of them, but a decent number of them would be happy to change the date. But this is the problem when you've got a public broadcaster. Like, if the ABC wasn't publicly funded, no one would care whether Mitch Fifield said that. He's allowed to say whatever he wants. He can have a crack at a private media organisation. The problem is when it's a public one, when he's, at least in some sense, connected to the ABC. He's in charge of them in a sense. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
But of course, Triple J should be allowed to hold Hottest 100 on whatever the hell date they want to hold it on.
Yeah. Are they allowed to make a political statement?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. No, I don't think it's a good idea that they do. But at the same time, I can understand that they wouldn't see it. The people that wanted to change the date of the Hottest 100, I don't think were trying to make a political statement. I think they just wanted to make it a date for everyone, which is fine.
Yes.
I don't-
So they canvassed their listeners and, you know, over 60% came back and said that they wanted it changed. And that's their listeners. That's, you know, those listeners are taxpayers, you know, so they're representing their audience. So, yeah. Are you reading that long
It's
question?
a very long one. Come on, Matt. Where's your 140 characters?
Hello, Matt.
Read it out to me, Kris.
Matt says it's a fallacy to say that because the ABC have a perceived left-wing bias, then they shouldn't be government funded. Good investigative journalism costs money and is not cost effective, which is why privatisation leads to national broadcasters like CBC in Canada. I know he lived in Canada for a time, which have very few viewers and crazily myopic news that carries very little international content. Same in the States. International news bureaus are prohibitively expensive.
Yeah. So that might be 100% true, Matt. I've never been to Canada, so what the hell would I know about Canada? And it might happen in Australia that if we privatised it, the ABC would become, you know, a waste of space. But again, that would just mean that more people will be reading Fairfax and The Guardian, and their revenue streams will increase. And that's got to be a good thing for them, I would have thought. But if that's not true, if that's just me being optimistic and maybe we really do need the ABC, then I think it would be fair for right-wing Australians, again, that's not me, I'm not right-wing, I think it would be fair for right-wing Australians to say, well, where's our publicly funded news organisation? Like, maybe we should have 2 publicly funded broadcasters. Maybe we should split the budget of the ABC. The ABC gets half of it, and we should start a moderately right-of-centre news organisation to present the news from a moderately right-wing perspective.
Why not just keep the one we've got and make them go down the centre?
Yeah, well, that would be even better. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I don't know how long the ABC's been around, but certainly as long as I've been around, they've been left-wing, and it'd be good if they changed, but they haven't seemed to yet.
Well, I think it's also partly to do with the fact that, you know, a lot of our mainstream media, and, you know, this goes back a bit to Aaron's question earlier about do the left need the ABC because they can't afford their own media outlets? You know, a lot of commercialisation, privatisation, that's more in the right-wing sphere of the world. You know, it's, you know, money is more a right-wing sphere thing, whereas left is more, could have a more socialist bent or something. So I'm like going, maybe more left-wing people are drawn to, you know, a public broadcaster, and more right-wing people would be drawn to, you know, a commercial-type broadcaster. Okay, what are they doing that's obviously left-wing?
Well, I don't know what to say. Everything. Like, what isn't?
Everything? All right.
Yes. The only thing I can recall that wasn't was, I remember was it a Four Corners series about Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard, the killing season? That did not show the Labor Party in a positive light. And I'm sure there's been stuff since then. I'm sure there has, but it's a problem when that's memorable.
Really? Comedy shows, the comedy shows that they have on there that, you know, have a dig at politicians.
Yeah.
They have a dig at politicians from both sides. Man, Bill Shorten cops it like nothing else on Sean McAuliffe, Mad as Hell sort of thing. Bill Shorten just cops a very raw end of the stick.
So you think
You know.
Mad as Hell is a right-wing leaning show?
No.
See, I
Not
don't know
at
what
all.
your point is. It's left-wing.
Oh,
Q&A's left-wing.
Q&A's left wing? How? Explain to me
Yes.
how. They did an inquiry on that and it's not left wing.
It's not the sort of argument that either of us are ever going to win, but
It's where you provide a voice. You provide a voice for people on the left and for people on the right, and you have a discussion. There's your show.
no, but it's
Like, how is that being biased towards one or the other?
Q&A get to choose which questions get asked. They get to choose the framing of the questions that are asked. They get to choose which panelists are on. Obviously, they are not puppets of the ABC, but you can make massive changes to the direction of a show by those sort of choices. What questions are asked, what panelists you choose.
Yeah, and they try and have as, you know, fair and unbalanced a audience. You know, I'm like, yeah, there's going to be little touches. There's always bias. But I'm like, how much more unbiased the show do you want? So how do you know that the people choosing the questions are left-wing?
Well, you don't. But you know what, like they know what the question is before they stand up. Like it's already been submitted. Like Tony Jones says, you know, we've got a question from the audience on that topic. Like he already knows what the question is before it starts. So they've already decided what the question is going to be.
Have you ever submitted a question to Q&A?
Yeah, I think so, but they've never been used.
I did, and they were going to use mine. I submitted a question, and then they contacted me and got me to record a video question of it because they were going to do that. And then one of the panelists basically asked exactly the question I was going to ask, so I got dropped from
Poor
the
Kris.
show. But my question got represented anyway, so that was fine. What else can we say? What else is on your agenda?
Well, I don't have any answers to this question, but I've got a question for you. You might not have any answers either, so
Okay.
we can just ditch it if there aren't any. With the new forms of media, whether it be social media or your YouTube or podcasts or that sort of stuff, there's been talk about whether these sort of media should come under some form of regulation, because at the moment they're not regulated in any way. And all of them essentially are monopolies. Like Facebook, there's no competitor to Facebook, there's no competitor to Twitter or YouTube, and there's no laws around them. Is there anything that should happen around those organisations? Is there anything that could practically be done that would make them more journalistically responsible? Like there was, around the time of the 2016 election, there was all those issues with Russia having troll farms where they would be presenting fake news that would make it look like Clinton had done dodgy stuff or was sicker than what she really was or whatever it was. And they could target swinging voters with those sort of Russian troll farms, and it makes a difference. It might have swung the election. Is there stuff that could be done in the new media sphere that could help our democracy?
Well, already things are being done in relation to all of that and what happened, in that there is pressure, at least. There is pressure for things to be done, and so those organisations are sort of taking some of their own steps. Whether or not there needs to be something external to those organisations, it's hard to do when you're a globalist organisation. How do you enforce all the rules? But yeah, so like, have you heard of the InfoWars?
I've heard of InfoWars, if that's what you're saying.
Oh, so there was this pretty, crazily, far right guy who, using his free speech, would say all sorts of crazy made up stuff. He's a big Trump, supporter, massive Trump supporter, blah, blah, blah. So,
This Alex Jones?
yeah, that guy. Yep. So he's now been banned. Firstly banned from YouTube and Facebook, and then Twitter, who were trying to leave him on there under their idea of free speech, but eventually they decided he should go as well. So these guys are taking steps to, I guess, regulate what they put on their own services, as far as, I guess, what they decide is worthy or not worthy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a terrible idea. So I've got no love for Alex Jones. So to give people an idea of how horrific some of his views are, he, in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook shooting in the elementary school in Sandy Hook in the US, he said publicly that it was a hoax, that it was a government hoax, that these kids weren't really shot, and it was just Obama's attempt at bringing in gun legislation. And that's just, that's horrific. But that being said, I don't think it should be illegal to say that. I know it's horrific.
Well, it's not illegal to say that.
No.
He still has a site.
Yes.
But he still has his free speech. But I guess that they have, from their own content guidelines, their own constitution, decided with their free speech that they're not going to share his.
Yeah, which is fair enough. They're private companies. They can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
The problem is, firstly, I don't think it's helpful, because all of Alex Jones's fans, that just fuels their conspiracy theorist fears that, the government is out to get Alex Jones because he uncovered their conspiracy about Sandy Hook. And it's just, no, it's because he's a dick. That's why they did it. But his fans don't see it that way. And so banning him I don't think it helps. I think it's counterproductive. Let him have his platform, show him why he's an idiot, have his fans, I suppose you'd call them that, exposed to other perspectives. Will that work? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. Let's be honest, probably not. But I think banning him does the opposite. I think it fuels the conspiracy theorists, and his fans are already going to be predisposed to being conspiracy theorists. Not helpful.
But I would say that there is an argument that, so if we're going to do something, because he's telling a story which doesn't have fact, like we're talking before, that any sort of journalism should be trying to hold to, factual account. So how do you hold them to it? So you're talking new media right now. How do you hold all of the new media, all of the bloggers, all of the podcasters, all of the YouTubers, how do you hold all of them under some sort of regulatory authority? I don't know how you would do that. How could you make a law which says you have to be factual, and how would you enforce that?
I don't think you can.
I don't know how you would enforce that. So for me, brings me back around to saying that more than ever we need this publicly funded, which doesn't have a vested interest from a commercial perspective, that's going to be impartial as possible to, present the facts to us. So that's what's going to beat the fake news stories.
But
we need something that we can trust.
Yeah.
But you don't trust them at the moment.
Well, it depends what you mean. Like, as I say, the ABC is my primary source of news.
Right.
And it's not that I look at it to try and find all the holes in it. It's just it's the closest thing to my ideological position. Now, a lot of the time I read it and go, oh, not this rubbish again. But it's still the closest to where I'm at. There's another website called Quillette, which I really love, but it's not news, it's sort of current affairs. And so it's, more long-form articles that'll go for 10 pages or whatever it is on different topics. So, yeah, Quillette's really good. It's by an Australian lady too, Claire Lehman, I think her name is. But, yeah, in terms of news, I think news is just a completely different thing to social media and these new medias, because content is being uploaded by anyone. Like, if I say something crazy, I don't think I should be banned. The line for me should be where it already is with freedom of speech, where it's inciting of violence. If someone posts something, so if ISIS start putting, well, they already do put stuff up online, so that stuff should be banned. If you're inciting violence, absolutely, we should want our government to force Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and whatever to pull that stuff down, because we don't want it to lead to actual violence. But if it's just someone saying something crazy, I think you've got to, what's that statement? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. That's the only way to do it, I think. Again, yeah, it sucks. Like what George Brandis was saying, he got slammed for it, that people have the right to be bigots. He didn't say this, but I say this. People have the right to be arseholes and have stupid opinions. And I don't think we should try and shut them down. I think we should invite them to the conversation, have a conversation with them, argue strongly for our positions, not just let them walk all over us, but argue our positions, not be afraid of the conversation, and let's have the conversation. Yeah,
all right. I don't know. I'm just worried that new media will continue to lower the trust in media because, as I was saying earlier, like the facts matter. They connect us to reality. And if we're not connected to it, if we're eating up all of this fake stuff, all of the stuff just from the left or just from the right or just crazy stuff, then it alters the perception of reality, and that has consequences. And that's clearly wrong. It's lies. It's built on lies. It's wrong. And that's not what we want. Like, yes, we're all biased. And so like us as Fifth Media, Nick, I think if you can't be completely impartial, then you need to at least be honest, about where your biases lie. Yeah. And a lot of opinion pieces don't necessarily do that. They present themselves as fact and everything. So I just remember my journalistic training. You always try and seek out the, like, what's the story? Who's involved? Where did it happen? When did it happen? So all the who, what, where, when, why, how, trying to get data. And because we're losing a lot of funding for real journalism, because it costs money, like Matt was saying earlier, to do proper investigative journalism costs money and it's not cost effective. It's just easier to come up with opinions than to do that. Yep. That's what worries me. That's why I'm going, I think we need a media that is going to act properly as that fourth estate, as the watchdog, that are going to hold the nobility to account.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can all be honest with ourselves that we have our own biases and we should be attempting to critically think through the stories that we read and, double check them. And
yeah. So on that, two things.
Yeah.
What you're saying about Matt, about journalism not being economically, whatever your word was, sustainable or whatever. We as consumers need to get the idea that nothing is free, and we need to be willing to pay for the content that we consume. Like, I am terrible at this. I seek out free stuff, I watch YouTube. And I use an ad blocker, so there's no ads coming through either. So no one's getting paid for the stuff that I watch. So, yeah, I'm a massive hypocrite here. But I think we need to have a new ethic of consuming, especially online, because we're so used to everything online being free. We need to get a new ethic that says that I do actually pay for the things that I value. I'm willing to pay whatever it is, $10 a month, to support my media organisation. And the second thing was about seeking out difference of opinion. Like, we as consumers need to take responsibility for ourselves and say, I'm going to seek out information from across the aisle. So there's this, I use Google Chrome as my web browser, and there's this extension for Chrome called Read Across the Aisle, where whenever I open a new tab, it comes up with a chart that shows the different news sites that I've looked at and where they sit on the political spectrum. And it will tell me that my average bias for, the last week has been moderately left or moderately right or centred or whatever. And that's just a nice nudge that reminds me, hey, I've been reading too much left-wing stuff this week, or I've been reading too much right-wing stuff this week. And it gives you that prompt to go, okay, my brain is being influenced. My views are being influenced by the stuff that I read. And I don't want to be pushed down this silo of whatever side it is. I want to be consuming news from across the political spectrum because I want to be coming up with my opinions myself. I don't want to just be taking the views from one side or the other.
Is that your final statement?
Yep. Bang.
Should I come up with a final statement?
Yeah, do it.
Oh.
Well, you don't have to.
What can I say? We should check our questions.
Yeah, good.
Bin the ABC and put the money into education and healthcare, says Aaron. I'm going, well, they keep talking about privatising. We've got private schools, private healthcare. Private schools are getting more money at the moment. I'm like, don't privatise everything.
Yeah, privatise it.
This is part of the problem.
Put it into foreign aid.
I'm not anti-capitalist like you think, but I am.
I know.
I am anti-greed.
I apologise for that, by the way, Chris.
That's all right. I just don't like. I don't like greed, and so I don't. There's a part of me which doesn't trust that privatising everything is going to be good for our society. So I love that there is a public broadcaster. I do pay for it already. Some people aren't happy with that, but there are a lot of things that we pay. What?
How do you pay for it?
With my tax. Right. And there are a lot of things that I pay for with my taxes that I'm not happy about either. I don't like money going to building fighter jets or something. I don't want my money to be going to private schools, or as much as is going to private schools. I don't mind money going to private schools, but I just think, yeah. But anyway, we won't get into that. I don't want my money going to, keeping people into offshore detention. But we are a society, and as a society, our government has decided this is where our taxes go. And I think that it's really important that we maintain this cultural institution, which is the ABC, because it's something which, informs us. It's something which entertains us. It teaches us, like I grew up on bloody Play School and everything. And I grew up on the music. What was it called? I can't even remember. The music TV show.
Rage.
No, well, Rage, but then there was some of the other ones.
Young Talent Time?
On a Saturday morning. No. Recovery. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, like things like this that meant a whole lot to who I am, and they sort of defined a lot of my youth and turned me into a lot of the person of who I am, right? Because I think that the ABC tells us in some respect who we are, reflects who we are. It's not like they don't have our interests at heart when they're doing that. We've all grown up with the ABC. They are there when there are fires, when there are fires, and they're warning people, where to go. It's something that's deeply ingrained, and a lot of people do appreciate that the ABC is there, and that counts, some people don't like it. There's some things I don't like that my taxpayer money goes to, but I just think, like Matthew says here, privatization kills journalism. Yeah, I hold a bit to that. Like, I think you can work for a private company and still hold your journalistic integrity, but there are vested interests and powers at play which make that harder to do.
Traditional news media journalism is dying regardless. Even if we keep the ABC, traditional news media journalism's going the way of the dinosaurs anyway.
We need something.
Real journalists are either starting their own organisation or they're online, they're podcasting, they're YouTubing. They're not joining the ABC or the Australian.
Well, I do believe you're right in that we should not be just expecting to get everything for free, though.
Mm.
And in that case, we're going to ask you to pay for the... No. No, we're two guys sharing opinions.
This does cost me money, though, bloody hell.
Yeah.
I pay for this.
Me too.
Yeah. That's all right. We enjoy it.
We do. And we enjoy that you come along and send us your questions and participate. And we hope that you enjoy it and that you don't get too angry with us. Because we don't know everything about this, but, you know, it's important to us. Well, I care about this. You know, you care about this.
The conversation is important. Got to keep the conversation going. Cool. Peace, people.
I'll join you in the peace. Peace.
Just go, I love the ABC.
I love the ABC.
God, here again. Now I know what you're thinking, because I always do. But you're thinking, glad that's over. Well, surprise, those two guys weren't really finished. Came back the next day thinking there was more to discuss, and oh boy, did they. So if you're a glutton for punishment, go to the extra next episode for more ABC. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. God bless.